Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Comic Boom Comic Source collaboration. It's your DC Spotlight for the week of February 5th, 2025. 10 books that are out this week. I just realized I didn't ask Rocky what his top five are, so I guess we'll find out as we as we go along. I mean, technically, we could talk about all 10,
Yeah, we could.
um,
Yeah.
but I have a feeling that there there's at least one that I could probably say for sure isn't in Rocky's top 10. I just missed mine. That being Shazam. I actually have it ranked number 6, but yeah, overall, I thought it was a pretty strong week. Yeah. What do you think,
Yeah.
Rocky?
I actually think it was mad, and I didn't even mind Shazam for what it was. It was a guest starring John Kent, son of Superman, and I thought it was a sort of a nice, kind of a nice tale, and for reasons which I'll briefly discuss if we're going to breeze over it. But yeah, I thought it was a pretty good week. I actually thought it was. Yes, I agree with you. All these titles are there's something to talk about. One in particular I really like. You could probably guess which it is, but we'll get to it.
Yeah, it's between two that if I had to guess, what your two contenders for book of the week are.
Yeah.
Um, which is surprisingly enough, yeah, I think my book of the week is really going to be a surprise to you. Um, but the other thing I'll mention before we get started, everybody, don't forget, head over to the Comic Source YouTube channel. Just do a search for the Comic Source on YouTube. That's where Indie Spotlight comes out every week. Pretty small independent week this week, only 3 books. So if you haven't joined us for an Indie Spotlight, we got a nice short one for you today. If you want to go over there and check it out. But don't forget, if you're listening to us audio only, the Comic Source is available on all podcast platforms and apps. Just do a search for the Comic Source, and you can get the audio feed. You miss out on our smiling faces, but maybe if you're working out or driving, it might be better for you. Plus, you have close to 2,500, I think, over 2,500 past episodes that you can go and explore, different reviews and interviews and all that kind of stuff. So definitely appreciate the support. But don't forget that the Indie Spotlight comes out every week on Rocky's YouTube channel, Comic Space Boom exclamation point. Once you're there, you know what to do. Like, comment, subscribe. Make sure to leave comments. Let us know what you thought of the books this week. We always love to hear what other people had to say. So, with all that being said, let's go ahead and kick it off. First book we're going to talk about is Batman 157. This is written by Chip Zdarsky, art by Jorge Jimenez and Tony S. Daniel, colors by Tomeu More, and letters by Clayton Cowles. Not only is it the finale of The Dying City, it is the final issue of Chip Zdarsky's run on the character. I have mixed feelings about that. Um, not that whatever I expected from Zdarsky's run needs to be what the run was. I just coming from his Daredevil run over at Marvel, which I wasn't. I got to be honest. I love Chip personally, but I wasn't a huge fan of his Howard the Duck. That was kind of I had read. That was the first thing I ever read from him was his Howard the Duck run, and I just didn't care for it. It wasn't my type of humor. And then the next thing I read after that was the Spider-Man life story, which while it was a good story, it was just very morose. And I was at the same time the Nick Spencer's Amazing Spider-Man run was going. I was like, man, can
Yeah.
anybody tell a Spider-Man story that's kind of fun, a little more lighthearted? Um, and so that I didn't have the best kind of taste in my mouth when it came to Zdarsky. And I remember having a conversation with you and Trevor, and you guys were like, "Oh man, Zdarsky, he's one of the best writers." And I was like, "What the hell are you guys talking about? I've read a couple things by this guy, didn't like him." And you were like, "No, you got to read his Daredevil. You got to read his Daredevil." So sure enough, I read his Daredevil, and it turned me around. I was like, "Wow, this is something really special." I read the entire run. I loved everything he did. So a lot of times people say Batman is kind of the Daredevil character of the DC universe. Now, granted, Daredevil has superpowers, but they're both very street characters. They're both dealing with a lot of trauma. Uh, Maybe it's a little safer to be Batman's girlfriend than it is to be Daredevil's girlfriend. And obviously, Bruce
Yeah.
has the fortune, and Matt sometimes struggles to make ends meet. But in a lot of ways, they are kind of similar. And so I kind of expected that kind of sensibility on Zdarsky's Batman, and that's not what we got. That's not to say that what we got wasn't good, but it felt overwrought at times, and the failsafe stuff took up like so much time, and then that got pulled into absolute power or whatever. So I sort of feel like this Dying City is the closest to kind of what I expected from Zdarsky, where it's sort of self-contained and it tells a really good Batman story with some emotional beats and some character moments where it's not just again overwrought. Like again, he jumps from space. He jumps from space and lands in Antarctica. Like, and then it's wrapped up in absolute power, and then the failsafe stories going on and on and on and on. So I sort of feel like he's just now hitting his stride, or we're just now getting to what I was really hoping would be the majority of his run, and now he's off the book, right? And I don't think that it was his choice necessarily, but when Jeff Loeb and Jim Lee are like, "Yeah, we're going to do Hush 2," what's DC? Of course, DC is going to put it in the regular Batman title and not have. Now, if the first Hush had been its own kind of standalone thing, I think this one would have been also. But I think being that Hush, the original, was in the regular Batman run, they really wanted to have this in the regular Batman run as well. So I enjoyed how it wrapped up. I enjoyed the frailty. I'm not going to talk too much about specific moments in this book, but I enjoyed the frailty of Jim Gordon and Bruce and how they're kind of comparing themselves. Hey, we're not perfect. I thought the art at the end, especially those character moments, that's Tony Daniel. Like, oh my God. Not that Jorge Jimenez isn't a fabulous artist, but Tony Daniel doing those close-ups on Batman's face and Jim Gordon's face when they're just on the roof talking, like how to keep it interesting and compelling when it's still, a visual medium, but it's just two guys standing on a roof talking. How interesting can it be? And what Tony Daniel does there really, it keeps you enthralled with what these guys are going through. And again, comparing their imperfectness and trying to accept that they can accept that each other is not perfect, but they have a hard time accepting it in themselves, which is so interesting. But a lot of credit to Zardasky. He tied everything up. The Bruce Wayne brother thing, KG Beast as the commander, he tied up. The only thing that's still left, and it'll be interesting to see if Loeb explores this at all, Vandal Savage is still the commissioner of the Gotham City Police Department, which is, again, just really strange. I don't know how that ever worked. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. I thought it was a fantastic arc, and definitely my favorite arc of Zdarsky's run. I'm kind of sad to see him leaving the book. Don't get me wrong. I want to read, a Hush sequel. But the Hush story, it came along. It was of its time. Early 2000s. Jim Lee at the height of his powers. He hasn't done a monthly book. He's already said this is the last monthly book he'll ever do. I just don't know. And again, I mean, the guy's been at the top of his game for a long, long time. I think back to the last monthly book. He was supposed to do Suicide Squad Rebirth. Did like every other issue. Only ended up doing like 3 issues. But I remember him doing the Superman Unchained with Scott Snyder. And after about 2 issues, it was so rushed. It was so unfinished. The art just wasn't at times very good. And so, yeah, I hope he's got the majority of it drawn at this point. Because, yeah, I think they're skipping a month or so, or maybe skipping a week, pushing a couple back. But we'll see. I mean, when you do sequels to seminal stories, I feel like a lot of times it just doesn't land in the same way. You know what I mean? Like, it's so hard to go back. It's never as great as your nostalgia might think. Specifically, I'm thinking of, and this is where they chose not to do it in the main titles, and maybe this is a lesson learned. You remember Hunter Prey? That was the sequel to the Death of Superman.
Doomsday. Yeah.
Yeah, Doomsday, Hunter Prey, and they did it in those perfect bound. It was 3 issues, no square bound, prestige, and I think it kind of flew under the radar. A lot of people missed it because it was a good story. It was like Doomsday's origin. Dan Jurgens' art, gorgeous art, but it kind of flew under the radar because it wasn't in the regular book. So, and it was direct market only. That that was back when stuff was on the newsstand. But anyway, yeah, I thought this was a good wrap up. I really enjoyed it. What do you think of it?
I thought it was really good. It was a nice wrap up. I like it. For there was a little bit of a. There's one thing you didn't mention, which I thought was hilarious. This being Chip Zdarsky's run, he didn't have Batman fall from a moon and survive. He had Batman jump on an airplane and ride an airplane like a Bronco and safely land the plane from being on top of the plane. I mean, only Batman can do that. If he can survive a fall from the moon, he could absolutely, land a plane safely right in the middle of Gotham. Explode the wings off, lands,
Yeah, cut the
right the
wings
street,
off. That would, yeah.
and roll just
Um,
perfectly, time the explosion perfectly, and unlike and I remember he did this one time at the beginning of Tom King's run. He did
yeah,
the
I
same
was gonna
thing,
say,
but
yeah,
but Tom King made it a very very emotional, and Batman was on top of the plane talking to Alfred, saying to Alfred, is this a good death? And it was a very poignant scene. It was the beginning of Tom King's run. It was a run that I ultimately ended up being not a huge fan of, but I enjoyed the early issues of Tom King's run with Gotham Girl so it was an exciting time for Batman fans, at least early on, at least for this Batman fan, and I remember that scene, and so this sort of harkens back to that. But this is the second time Batman's been on top of a plane for sure, so he just made it look so easy. But I thought it was funny. Other thing is Harvey Bullock got fired because Harvey Bullock was Batman, of course, was telling him, clear the streets. We got an airplane landing, and then Commissioner Vandal Savage told Harvey Bullock, said, belay that order. Don't get the people out of the way. He's being a dick. But Harvey Bullock disobeyed orders, so he ends up getting fired. Jim Gordon at the end, after that poignant, very good emotional moments and dialogue between Batman and Commissioner Gordon. They talk about how Jim Gordon might go back, join the force again, even though he might be demoted and he might face, he might be commanded by Savage, and the typical Gordon thing. Gordon's almost like Charlie Brown. He's always downtrodden. He always does things the hard way, and he's always so damn hard on himself. I mean, now he just can't get over the fact that how could he give in to temptation and sleep with the mayor's wife, Nakano's wife, and did he believes that maybe he could have resisted pulling the trigger, that despite the mind control of the Mad Hatter in his glasses, that he should have prevented himself. I mean, he's just typical Gordon angst. He's more so than even Batman has in terms of that vow against killing. So in any event, I thought it was well done, and I thought there was good moments even with the brother of Bruce Wayne, who ends up not really actually being his brother, but there were some good moments there. Actually, a surprising moment. He ends up being a very good man, which is sort of a nice change in a Batman comic. Not all corollary characters or side characters are jerks. He ends up being quite a nice guy. But all around, I thought it was really good. You mentioned the art. That was fantastic. I thought it was really good. A good way to end Chip Zardasky's run. And it was a mixed bag, but for the most part, I enjoyed most of it, except for Gotham War. But the rest I thought was intriguing. I even enjoyed the jump from the moon.
I forgot about I totally forgot about Gotham War. Maybe I blocked it out, but yeah, from like the failsafe to Gotham War to Absolute Power, it's like he never had a chance to just tell regular Batman stories. Yeah, I totally forgot about Gotham War. So, did this make your top five? Would it?
Uh,
Your top five?
yeah, it did. Yeah, it made my top five. Yeah, I haven't actually put my mind 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, it made my top five. I didn't rank them, but it would be my top five. Yeah.
Yeah, I do rank mine every week, everybody. Now that I'm like, I've said this for years on the podcast. I'm going to keep track of it. I'm doing it. I'm keeping track. I got the title. I got the publisher. I got the writer, artist, inker, color artist, letterer. Got a place for notes. And then I got my weekly rank. And then I have, if it's getting any Comic Source Awards, end of year awards, if it's getting any consideration in one category or another. So I'm keeping track of all that. So yeah, I'm ranking. So I'm going to go ahead and start saying what my rank is. I don't know, maybe, when it's like the last book out of 15, then maybe it's not very flattering, but yeah, I'm doing it. So I might as well talk about it. So anyway, this makes number 4. There's 10 books this week, and Batman makes number 4 for me. All right. Up next, we have JSA. Speaking of number 4, it's issue number 4, Ragnarok Part 4, written by Jeff Lemire. We have a guest artist, Joey Vasquez, colors by Luis Guerrero, letters by Steve Wands. Give us your thoughts on this one, Rocky.
This was okay. I didn't mind it, but it wasn't in my top 5. It was just I thought it was. This JSA issue just focuses more on Dr. Midnight, but it was a good enough issue, I guess. It was to be honest, I think this is to my knowledge, this is probably the first time we've ever really gotten a solo issue dedicated Well, mostly with this Doctor Midnight. I'm accustomed to the other Doctor Midnight, the male character. This is the I can't remember. This is his niece or his daughter or whatever. But she's she's basically captured. She's stripped of her goggles, so she's genuinely blind. She ends up, but she ends up very wisely. She's prepared for this. She's been trained by Batman, taught to fight by Wildcat. She's been taught by Batman and even Mr. Miracle in terms of how to the great to escape, the great escape artist. And so she's got some hidden gadgets on her costume that help her escape from the clutches of Solomon Grundy. And she basically spies on the Injustice Society as they're talking about the machinations they have against the JSA. And then we see Johnny Sorrow, and then there's I'll be honest with you, I'm actually there's is it I'm not even sure. I can't remember who the one character is that Dr. Midnight ends up fighting. This short-haired redhead. I don't know. I can't remember her name. I'm still getting
Yeah,
the
I was kind of wondering too. And
yeah
soon the world will know Sorrow. I thought maybe her name was Sorrow. I mean, we have Johnny Sorrow. Is there a
yeah
DC character named Sorrow?
yeah. Well, I thought is there another? I don't know. I don't know. But is that? I thought maybe that was at first. I thought it could be Vandal Savage, but it's not. But I don't know. I can't remember who that is. I'm sure there's going to be people that will tell us in the
Yeah,
chat
you're
or
talking
in the,
about the she's on the splash page on the last page, right? Is that who you're talking about?
yeah. I'm not sure. Yeah. I'm not sure who that is, and I'm
I
sure
don't
I'll
know
be
who.
embarrassed and told next time. But um, a little bit of a pet peeve. I wish it was more obvious in the comic. I'm just not familiar enough with the character to know. So it sort of took me out a little bit, to be honest, because I couldn't read anywhere where her name was actually stated. I don't know who she is. I'm not even sure what her power set is, other than the fact that she has some blades. Um, yeah, and but there's some cool moments with Obsidian and Johnny Thunder, where you know they're going to escape and warn the others. So it's okay. It's yeah, it was okay. Like I said, it wasn't bad at all. It was Justice Society characters, what have you, and but it was overall, it was. I just thought it was kind of meh. Joey Vasquez, though, I thought the art was really good, and colors by Louis Guerrera, I thought was really good. Uh, so despite there was really good fight scenes, good dialogue, it was good pacing. Uh, yeah, so overall, not a bad comic. It had too much competition this week to be in my top five. What about yourself?
Yeah, eight ranks eight for me. I was the same way. I'm like, I didn't know who this woman was. I was hoping you would be able to tell me because I didn't read JSA. Um, but yeah, she's talking about herself in the third person. Is her name Sorrow? Like I did a search for Sorrow, and all that comes up is Johnny Sorrow. So yeah, I don't know who it is. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you. The art was fantastic. Seeing Obsidian was great. Finding out what he's been up to. So yeah, not and I love that we're focusing on Doctor Midnight, Beth. When I interviewed Jeff Lemire last, he mentioned it was a bit of a surprise to him that he discovered how much he likes this younger female version of Doctor Midnight. So I'm sure we're going to learn more about her. But it was great. Like even when she didn't necessarily have her abilities when she was blind, she can only. So for those that don't know, she can only see in the dark if she doesn't have her goggles on, her infrared goggles. Um, but she's still very formidable. She's been trained by Wildcat as a fighter and what have you. So, yeah, very, very interesting character. Looking forward to learning more. All right. Up next, we have, excuse me, Justice League, the Atom Project, issue number 2. Ryan Parrott and John Ridley are the writers. Mike Perkins on art. Adriana Lucas on colors. Wes Abbott on letters. I've really been enjoying this series, partly because Captain Atom is a character that I really enjoy. And I feel like at times DC doesn't know what to do with him. So this is ranked 5th for me. We get a lot of kind of the lead up to Captain Atom escaping, him getting the cure and what have you. They fight a bear. There's humor there when they're fighting this bear because we find out that Captain Atom's powers in that crazy shuffle in absolute power, his powers went to a bear of all things. So they kind of have to knock the bear out and then have the bear kind of, they lay the power stabilizer, the bear's paws on the power stabilizer. Um, Captain Atom grabs the other end, and yeah, we find out that he's got probably more. We don't find out yet, but it's hinted that he's back to normal, but maybe from what we've seen in the flash forward, that he's got more powers than he should have ended up with. So I guess the power stabilizers didn't work as maybe as well as they thought it would. And then in very traditional Captain Atom story, for those fans that have read way back the Carrie Bates run and what have you, but in typical Captain Atom fashion, General Ealing is up to his Machiavellian scheming and just pretty much being a scumbag. So he's up there with Amanda Waller in terms of likability. He's just a character you love to hate. He's lying. He's deceitful. He's self-serving. Just a guy you can't stand and can't trust. And I have a hard time. I used to have a hard time believing that somebody of such a low moral character could become a general. But I mean, I can't say that anymore with the way like the leaders in this country, look who gets elected. So who knows? Maybe being a lying, cheating, greedy bastard leads you to the promised land when it comes to the military and in a surprise to me. But anyway, the Mike Perkins art is interesting. I'm a big fan of Mike Perkins, and last time we had Mike on, we talked about the fact that this is not really what he normally does, like really traditional superhero sort of stuff. But it's kind of working, and I give a lot of credit to Adriana Lucas on the colors as well. When Captain Atom gets his powers back and everything's kind of glowing with this pink lightning and what have you, it just looks fantastic. I'm not sure if the dual storylines is what's best serving the story. Might have been best to go a little bit more linear. I'm not sure about the decision to jump back and forth. I think if you read it all in a collected edition, it's probably kind of easier to follow. Not that this is really convoluted. It's not like Tom King level where you got many different timelines. It's just two. But I think part of what happens, it's like when you're reading a really good book, right? Like you're reading one plot thread in the book and you're really getting into it. And then you come to the end of the chapter and you really want to know what happens next. And you go to the next chapter and they've switched to different characters, different plot thread, different, and you're like, oh man, I really wanted to find out, what was going to happen with those other characters. But then you read that chapter and then you get really invested in them. And just when you're like, oh man, I want to know what happens with them, then it switches. That's sort of what this is, right?
Yeah.
So just when you start to move along with, I think you're going to get some answers with one of the plot threads, it jumps to the other plot thread. So that might just be a personal thing for me where I'm like, man, I really want to know. Maybe it's a sign of good storytelling that it's compelling and I want the answers. But it's interesting too. The last thing I'll say, and I'll pass it off to Rocky, is I'm a fan of Ryan Parrott. Read a lot of his I haven't read any of his Power Ranger stuff, but I've pretty much read everything else the guy's done. And his Vicarious is just highest possible recommendation over at Boom right now. It's an amazing, amazing series. I've read a lot of what John Ridley has done as well. And so I feel like I have a pretty good sense of what their storytelling style is, and I can kind of get a feel for what their books feel like. With them collaborating together, this doesn't feel like a Ryan Parrott book, and it doesn't feel like a John Ridley book, but it still feels really good. I'm really enjoying it. So I kind of expected to enjoy it. I was hoping to enjoy it because I am a Captain Atom fan. I feel like he's up there with Wally West in being mistreated in my mind by DC editorial. I don't know, for whatever reason. But this is maybe my favorite. Well, he hasn't had a series since the New 52. He had that Death and Rebirth where they tried to undo a lot of the New 52 stuff, which was lame. But I'm really enjoying this. And I do feel like, it does say the Atom Project, and obviously we have Ray Choi and Ray Palmer and Ryan Choi, the Atoms, along with Captain Atom. But I sort of feel like the Atoms, the scientist guys, they're sort of more supporting characters. I feel like this really is a Captain Atom book, which is good. I mean, that's what I want. That's what I wanted. Again, I love the character. So anyway, what were your thoughts on it, Rocky?
Well, I'm actually, I find myself very intrigued. I think Ryan Parrott and John Ridley are doing a really good job here, of, at least for me, of getting me really interested in Captain Atom because clearly the I think it's working for me going back, showing scenes from the past and juxtaposing that with scenes from the present. Because clearly, Captain Atom, he does ultimately get his powers back, but then he discovers he's capable of acquiring new powers, and he doesn't want, for whatever reason, he leaves the Atom Project. He sort of escapes, and he doesn't want to be found. And I'm not really sure why. What's going on there? I find it very interesting. I also find it kind of interesting, almost kind of horror-like, is there's another Atom Smasher, who is capable of growing really big. He lost his powers. He's a former member of the GSA, and he's got a deformed head, and he looks awful. And he was experimented on by the Atoms, Ryan Choi and Ray Palmer, and it was a disastrous result. And I don't know how in the hell would that inspire confidence for Captain Atom looking at this grotesque. I mean, who the hell would like voluntarily put up with and then Ryan Choi and Ray Palmer sort of like make a joke about it. Like, this isn't funny. I always got to give credit to Ridley. Always seems to write books that make me think and sort of challenge my conventional way of looking at things, even if it's a superhero book. And combining that with Ryan Parrot's all the better, because maybe he's got a little bit more of a Ryan Parrot's got a little bit more of a superhero flair. Ridley is more of a grounded writer with more realism taken. It's a really nice combination for this comic, I think, because it. I like the fact that it's a superhero comic, but I also like the fact that it's making me think, and I'm a little bit disturbed by the fact that the Justice League presumes that they have the right to go tell people that acquire powers what to do with them and round them up. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, if you lost your powers and I acquired them, they're mine now. Leave me alone. Like what are you? Is this a fascist state? Like, leave me the hell alone. Nobody bothered you, young Clark Kent, while you were developing your powers of your lifetime. Leave me the hell alone. Like, I'm kind of joking. I'm kind of not, but I kind of like how that there's that tension there about, well, I don't know if I agree with the heroes here. And I kind of agree with Captain Atom to an extent, but I have to admit that, well, he's Captain Atom, arguably the most powerful hero there is, or potentially, and we've got hints of that through even Jenny Sparks, how powerful Captain Atom can actually be. But anyways, I Mike Perkins, just his art's fantastic. He has a realism to it. He grounds it in a realistic look, and the facial expressions and everything else. It just really works for me, and I'm really interested in where this story is going to go. And because it's John Ridley, and apologies to Ryan Parrott, I like Ryan Parrott, but John Ridley just has a way of just grounding me into, getting me really into the deeper issues of a story. And I'm really interested to see where this is going to go. And this is one that's in my top 5, but I didn't rank them.
Yeah, it comes in number 5. I don't know if I said that, but it comes in number 5 for me. So yeah, really, really enjoyed it. You know what I realized though, if I do this, if I name the rank when I give it, then it's going to give away what my pick of the week is before it. So maybe I won't. When I get to the top 3, I'll just say this is my top 3. All right. Up next, we have Two-Face issue number 3, Matchmaking in Hell, from writer Christian Ward. Art is by Fabio Veras, colors by Ivan Placencia, and letters by Hassan Otsman Elhel. What are your thoughts on this one?
I found myself pleasantly surprised by this. I enjoyed this more than I expected to, quite frankly. I kind of like the fact that, it's basically, there's this sort of shadow group that the shadow hand that is trying to undermine the criminal underground, and Harvey Dent, who is basically trying to deceive his fellow criminals. Because he's trying and arguably failing to try to contain the Two-Face identity, the evil side of him in check, the darker side of him in check. And Christian Ward's done a really good job of sort of creating a mental prison where Harvey Dent has created literally a prison inside his mind, and Two-Face is his darker half, is literally a prisoner in a prison in his own mind. And it's done really well. And there's all kinds of things that you can do with that, and I think it really works here. And what I particularly like about this is that we get this he has his sidekick, I can't even remember her name. It's not important, but he's got. I like the supporting cast. I like the supporting cast. In this issue, it's basically one of the Batman villains' baby doll, who was she was a villain. She was a young girl. She was born with systemic hypoplasia, where she doesn't grow, so she always looks like a little girl, even though she's an adult in a little girl's body. And she is basically she's taken over. She's mind controlled by a character we haven't seen in a while called Doubt, which he can plant doubts and sort of mind control what people do. And he has Baby Doll basically steal the ventriloquist doll, the ventriloquist dummy. And so Two-Face or Harvey Dent, sorry, has to get the doll back. Because Baby Doll steals the ventriloquist doll, and she has this idea in her head that she wants to start a family, and it's obviously really crazy, and it's psychedelic, and these are crazy it's the type of plot you'd expect from a crazy Batman villain. But Harvey Dent he's actually the most rational in the room, but he's also one that he's not in control of his mind as much as he would think. And there's a revelation in this issue in terms of who is controlling the shadow hand. And it's a massive revelation that is revealed to him by Doubt, because Doubt tells him, I doubt that you can keep your darker self in check. And of course, forcing Harvey Dent to, tempting Harvey Dent to release the darker half of Two-Face within his mind. He manages to overcome that, but not before it's revealed that the leader of the Shadow Hand, the villain behind everything, is in fact Harvey Dent's darker half, Two-Face. And how that can be, how that's going to play out, I don't know if I've seen clues of that so far in the narrative. If I have, maybe they're there and I didn't quite pick up on that, or I missed them. But I like it. I like the revelation. I'm surprised that I got to be surprised. I wasn't expecting much from this series. I really wasn't. I always think of Harvey Dent Two-Face stories as a little bit derivative and tropey and what have you, but this one actually has managed to surprise me. I like the art, and I like the plot. I like the supporting cast. This is writer and artist. I think he's
not doing the art. He's just
not
writing.
doing the art this time. Sorry, it's Varys doing the art. Placencia on the colors, but Christian Ward's done a good job. I'd never thought of him as much of a writer, but this is for me. I know he's written a few other things maybe, but I'm impressed with this so far. I'm surprised. What about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, it's clearly not his art is so esoteric and out there. And I remember he did that Batman. What was it called? Like Under Gotham City or whatever it was.
Yeah,
it was like the Under Gotham. It was so weird. So yeah, I mean, this is much more of a procedural. His art, again, it's so kind of out there. But yeah, I mean, he did Bloodstained Teeth, where he just wrote it. Patrick Reynolds handled the art. That was a fantastic series as well. So he definitely has the chops. Harvey, it's so interesting because it just is coming across as a procedural, but with obviously classic elements of Two-Face being a Batman villain, what have you. So I am enjoying that. But this idea of, Harvey as the lawyer, and so obviously he has the investigator and what have you. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Her name is Lake Cantwell. That's who you were trying to think of. She's an interesting character. She's a lot of fun, and there's, we have a lot more to learn about her that will happen at some point. So yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily what I expected from a Two-Face book, kind of, similar to what you were saying. But for being his first solo series, Christian Ward is doing him justice for sure. So, yeah. And again, that Lake Cantwell as a character is just fantastic. This doesn't make my top 10 though. It's actually down at number 9, but that just, nothing against it. It's 9 of 10, but, like everything was good this week. So
this was in my top 5.
Yeah. Oh, there we go.
I put this in my top 5. I thought it was good enough to make my top 5. I was pleasantly surprised there.
All right. Up next, we have Birds of Prey, number 18. Kelly Thompson's the writer. Juan Cabal on art. Adriana Lucas on colors. Clayton Cowell on letters. Like two separate storylines here. People are coming after Sin. Meanwhile, we still have the rest of the Birds of Prey sort of hanging back, if you will, because John Constantine needs help with something. So Barda is not exactly happy to be left behind with Batgirl, while Sin and Black Canary are like, okay, if people are after Sin, we don't want to go out there all together. We want to sort of set a trap. We'll go out to this cabin in the woods, and hopefully it'll seem like we're a little vulnerable because it's only the two of us, and then they'll attack them, but we'll be prepared for them and what have you. So they leave, and then Constantine reaches out to Oracle, needs help or what have you, and that's where Barda and Batgirl get a chance to go to his rescue. So feels very traditionally Birds of Prey-ish, I guess you'd say. I love the art. We're getting more toward that sort of classic primary palette that I really enjoy in superhero comics. This art is a little more house style from Juan Cabal. So yeah, I thought this was a pretty strong entry. One of the better issues. Really feel like Kelly Thompson's finding her footing on this book, and it's made it number 7 on my list this week. So what'd you think?
I it's funny. This was okay. I agree with you. It does feel like a Birds of Prey book. She's finding her footing more. I think it's taken her longer than I would have liked for her to find her footing, if I'm honest. But I still think Big Barda. She I don't know. I'm not her voice that she gives Big Barda doesn't quite ring true to me. Um, uh, in fact, it's different than the voice in. I prefer the voice that she has in New Gods, which is different under Ram V. Um, Clearly, the two writers don't communicate, and it's probably a good thing. But in any event, there's humor here. There is humor here. These characters know each other. Kelly Thompson writes them as if they know each other, and despite the fact that I feel that the plot sort of pulls the characters along, I don't find that the actions of the characters move the plot. I find that the plot moves the characters. That's my criticism. I wish so something is not quite gelling for me, but I will admit that the characters are so strong and compelling, and I really like the Big Barda and the relationship between Big Barda and Cassandra Cain. I really like that, and I like the rapport between Black Canary and Sin. I'm really curious why are these? I'm guessing it's the League of Assassins or somebody looking for Sin. What's their motive? What's their reasoning there? Where's that going to lead? I like that. I like that Barbara Gordon continues to. She's comfortable as just being Oracle. She's not. I like the fact that she's not willing. She's not so quick to jump to be Batgirl herself. I like that Cassandra Cain has that spotlight, and we get the best of both worlds. And so, yeah, overall, I enjoy this. It's nothing really that's blowing me away, but again, it's one thing about Kelly Thompson is that she's consistent, and she never she's always good, maybe not always great with me, but she always entertains me. And so this is not in my top 5, but it was still one healthy, good addition to a week that was pretty good overall.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely feels like this is getting better. That first arc just didn't work that well for me, but like we both said, she's finding her footing. So yeah, I definitely enjoyed this. But did I say what I ranked it? Yeah, number 7. So, all right, I'll let you talk about this. I don't really have much to say. If there's one book that just didn't really hit for me this week, it's probably Batgirl. This really hasn't been working for me. I'm not. I like Cassandra Cain. I think she's the best Batgirl, but I don't have the knowledge of her that you do. So maybe I'm the wrong person to talk about her as a character, but like it just feels wonky. It feels awkward to me. Her relationship with Lady Shiva. Maybe it's supposed to feel like that. I'm not sure. But yeah, haven't been the biggest fan of this book. So anyway, it's Batgirl issue number 4. Tate Bromble is the writer. Takeshi Miyazawa on art. Wayne Fokker on inks, Mike Spicer on colors, Tom Napolitano on letters. I will say that, excuse me, that I do enjoy the art. I think the art has been a pleasant surprise. It's been really, really good. So, anyway, what are your thoughts on it?
Well, I find it it's depressing to hear that you say that you're not really maybe it's not really for you or you're not really following it for whatever reason. Because uh, maybe I'm just too I have too much history in my head. To me, it reads. I like this. I love the history here. I'm familiar with all these characters. I mean, uh, all of these characters have a history here, and it's all dealing with DC martial arts history and the best of the best, and even a callback to a Greg Rucka series with Nisa Al Ghul being there, previously believed to be dead, that she's back. I like that Cassandra Cain is she doesn't know who to trust. She normally doesn't trust her mother, and then all of a sudden all these other villains and assassins are in the same room, and they all seem to have the same vested interest of dealing with this larger threat. And I like what Tate Brombell has done here, in that is forgive me, is Tate a man or a woman?
Man,
Man, my apologies, Tate. Tate's done a good job, I think, of getting in of showing Cassandra Cain's sort of growth as a character, because she's often maybe thought of herself as being a protege or one of the proteges of the Batman, working for the Batman family. Often maybe asking herself, what would Batman do? Thinking like Batman. And I love the fact that at the end of this issue, it's very symbolic, but for me, I think it's very significant and powerful for the evolution of the character, that she begins to understand that for some crises that you find yourself in, she realizes that in order to get out of this one, she has to think like her mother. And you know what? Thinking like Lady Shiva probably has its advantages when you're in a life and death situation, more so one could say than even Batman, arguably. And I really like that here. It ends with ultimately disaster happening. All the sort of like villain slash allies she has are all essentially taken out, or some killed, some taken out. Her mother kidnapped. And it ends with her and another one of the characters, Jayeshi, going to look, or Jayesh, sorry, going to look for chasing after her mother. I thought it was very well done. You once again you're privy to the thoughts of Cassandra Cain. I like through the narration you can read and see that Cassandra Cain is reading the body language and what she sees, and what the limitations of her abilities are depending on who her opponent is. I think it's very well done. I wish, I wish that I hope that more people don't feel like you. I hope that people can sort of maybe appreciate the character, because I don't know. I'd like to see more of Cassandra Cain, because I think she's so unique. And I think that the potential here is just amazing, because some of my favorite moments it involved the relationship. Even during the Batgirl series, I didn't like written by the Kloonrads. The best issues were when Lady Shiva showed up. The antagonism between son and daughter and mother, and even during the Deceased, I think that was the one Deceased series where Lady Shiva and Cassandra, and Lady Shiva sacrificed her life in that Deceased series. I thought that was awesome. I mean, these characters I think are underused and underutilized, and it's great to see them in this series. And I wish this was more than just a series. Hopefully it'll sell well, and it will get its own series beyond this, or maybe this is a full series. I don't know. It
yeah, I
doesn't.
mean, I think as far as I know, it's an ongoing.
Oh, good. Oh,
Yeah,
fantastic.
yeah,
I
but I
hope
don't know
it
how long.
remains that.
Yeah, yeah. It
Yeah.
just, I mean, I go back to the and I get it. Like I'm comparing different eras or whatever, but like that initial Cassandra Cain Batgirl run, like this to me feels so different to that. Now, granted, I didn't read the whole entire thing. I think the first 20 issues or whatever, but different thing. This feels sort of separate. This doesn't feel connected to the rest of the Bat universe the way that book did. So, but again, I don't have necessarily the knowledge that you do, um, and I don't find the supporting character or the storyline to be that interesting. It's not. where I want to see Cassandra Cain fighting criminals in Gotham City. That's what I like. I like, to see her kicking butt there, like fighting these ninjas and whoever these unburied are.
Yeah, I put
I
this at
don't
number
have.
5, by the way. I'm not a number 5 for me. This one. Sorry,
Gotcha.
I'm
Yeah.
ranking them now. Sorry.
Yeah. It just, again, like, because the unburied, they're new characters. I'm not invested in them. I sort of don't care, So
Yeah,
I don't know.
I can see that if you're not into it.
All
Yeah.
right. Up next, we have Poison Ivy number 30. This one's definitely my top 3. Written by G. Willow Wilson, Marcio Takara on art, Arif Prianto handles the colors, and letters by Hassan Otsman Elhad. This book is so underrated, and it's so great. We're getting the green, we're getting the gray. Over in Aquaman, we're getting the blue. Like, I love how these different parts of the natural world are being explored in the DC universe, and sort of tying them together. So we get some history of the gray here, and we understand a little bit more about how powerful Poison Ivy has become since her resurrection. We meet this the character that we've seen Poison Ivy interacting with, this big giant golem. He almost looks like a giant swamp thing a little bit. But we find out his name is Xylon. Again, his connection to the gray is revealed. Great double-page spread, sort of explaining the history of the gray and its connection to the green and what have you. And Xylon explaining to Poison Ivy that she needs to be their mouthpiece in a way, because if the Earth dies, they all die, right? The red, the green, and the gray. Maybe not the blue. And that, that'll be next week. I've already read it in the next issue of Aquaman, so we'll see how that plays out. But it's been hinted by Jeremy Adams that the blue extends beyond planet Earth. But anyway, these different realms, these different groups, they need to work together, and that's Xylon's point. Poison Ivy's like, well, the Parliament of Trees, they hate me, they're not going to work with me, and what have you. And Xylon's, yeah, but you have a connection, I'll protect you. And again, she tries to sort of beg off and say, I'm not a good ambassador. And so it's an interesting place that she's in. And then on the other half of the book, I don't think this is, necessarily a flip book where the second half of the book is upside down. I don't think there's 2 covers or whatever. But maybe there is, I don't know. But the other half of the story is told from the point of view of Janet from HR. And we see her, she's having this relationship with Killer Croc, which is just really strange. I mean, don't get me wrong. DC has definitely softened Killer Croc up from, what he was, I guess, trying to add layers to him and make him a little bit more interesting. I mean, he was always a bit of a tragic character. He's got the skin condition, and kids made fun of him, and he eventually turned to a life of crime. But he'd eat people and do all kinds of horrible things. And now he's, having intimate relations with Janet from HR. I mean, she really gets around. She's slept with just about everybody in this book: Harley Quinn, Poison Ivy, now Killer Croc. But we get some context into who she is, and she's tempted by somebody to betray Poison Ivy, and he's sort of playing on her insecurities, which feels very realistic in a lot of ways. And you can see that she's sort of torn at the end when she meets up with Poison Ivy. So there's the big story that's going on, and I loved it. I love the way G. Willow Wilson set this up, where we have the bigger story going on of the different realms or spheres, the gray, the and the green, and how Poison Ivy's dealing with sort of end of world stuff. And that's juxtaposed against this Janet from HR and her relationships and the struggles she has to sort of fit in and not feel like she's being taken advantage of and what have you. And when the Parliament of Trees shows up and makes her this offer, hey, we'll give you anything you want. All you have to do is betray Poison Ivy and what have you. And their justification for this is how Poison Ivy's just using her and taking advantage of her and overlooking her and don't see her as important. But yet they're doing the exact same thing. They're doing the exact same thing. The Parliament of Trees is doing the exact same thing that they're accusing Poison Ivy of doing. They're just using Janet from HR as a pawn, but she can't see it. She's too close to it. So that's really interesting character work. And again, like these two plot threads, which are obviously entwined with each other. One is like the big macro story, and one is kind of the personal micro story that that makes us care about these characters. So it's just brilliantly done. Again, elevating Poison Ivy. Like it wasn't that I disliked Poison Ivy. I didn't like her or dislike her. She was irrelevant to me, just random, two-dimensional Batman villain. Hated the Uma Thurman portrayal of her in Batman and Robin way back in the day. But G. Willow Wilson from the start has made me care about Poison Ivy. I never would have thought. Like, it was one of those books, like, when it's come out, Poison Ivy's getting her own series. Like, originally it was just going to be 6 issues, right? And the art style by Marcio Takara, he's been on the book since the beginning. He's missed an issue here or there. But it's not typically the type of art style that I enjoy. But it's perfect for this book. But based on the first issue when I read it, not the art style, not really my cup of tea. It's Poison Ivy. I don't really care. I did not expect to like the book, but within 2 or 3 issues, like, oh, this is really good. The characterization's good. It's interesting what G. Willow Wilson has done. And now here we are, 30 issues in. I can't believe this book's gone on for 30 issues. That's crazy to me. 30 issues for a Poison Ivy book. Not too long ago, I think just last week, we were talking about how Hawkman, for being around for decades, Golden Age hero, one of the first DC superheroes, has never had a book get to 50 issues. With the momentum and the strength of Poison Ivy, I would not be surprised to see this get to 50 issues. How crazy would that be if Poison Ivy has a series that makes it to 50 issues and Hawkman doesn't? But again, the quality of this book, and maybe it's the Batman thing, Batman fans picking this up. Maybe it's the Harley Quinn fans, because Harley does show up in this book quite a bit. And maybe there's, people that were Harley fans that have become Poison Ivy fans based on their relationship. I can't explain it, but the sales on this book and the fact that it's continuing as an ongoing series are very much deserved. So anyway, what did you think of it, Rocky?
I found it interesting that Xylon makes the offer he makes Janet of HR. He says to her, he hands her an acorn.
That's not Xylon. Xylon's the one that talks to Poison Ivy. That's a Parliament of the Trees representative. Looks like
okay. I thought it was a different version of Xylon. Okay,
no,
all right.
No. Xylon's the representative of the gray, and this guy's representative of the green, Parliament of Trees.
Oh, okay. I was a little confused then, but in any event, so the Parliament of Trees gives her an acorn that says, when you hear Poison Ivy speak to us, whisper her words to this seed, and in return we shall give you your heart's desire. I think that's interesting. What is Janet of HR's heart's desire? Is it to be with Poison Ivy, or is it something else? Or is it to be, with Killer Croc? I don't think it's to be with Killer Croc. It's interesting. J. Willow Wilson has done a really good job here of mixing all kinds of different all kinds of character motivations, jealousies, loves, hates, loves, everything in between in this series. And I finally have a deeper appreciation of what J. Willow Wilson has accomplished here, because at first, as I've said before repeatedly, we both talked about how we thought, at least, is she a villain? Or, you got to make up your mind. Is Poison Ivy a villain? Is she an anti-hero? Is she a hero? I preferred her as a villain. And it's precisely because, and this is the brilliance of what J. Willow Wilson has done here by incorporating the gray and the green and the Parliament of Trees, it's precisely because Poison Ivy is all of those things that she is the perfect embodiment of what has attracted the Parliament of Trees to her, what has attracted the gray to her, what has attracted the green to her, because she's ill-defined. She's not specifically all green. She's a good representative of the green, because as she told Swamp Thing, and as Swamp Thing told her, well, you're not afraid to do destructive things, but yet you've held back. Swamp Thing arguably's done very destructive things, you could say, on a level of that Poison Ivy would. Poison Ivy herself, she's going through sort of a crisis of conscience. She's been raised, she's had some trauma in her life in that long 25-issue origin, which was, while padded, it J. Willow Wilson did a good job of it. And so I've reached a point where I appreciate now it actually feels sophisticated as opposed to wonky and unpredictable with regard to her character. Poison Ivy now makes a little bit more sense to me because her complicated nature is perfectly in keeping and makes her a perfect candidate for the role that she's currently playing as a sort of an uncomfortable interrogatory between the gray, the green, and the Parliament of Trees, and this represented by Xylon and this other character, I guess. But don't let my mistake and my confusion mislead anyone listening. This is a good series, and this is definitely one that's grown on me, and it's well worth a read.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. It's definitely worth your time. So, all right. Up next, the aforementioned Shazam number 20, Youth Without Youth. Sina Grace is the writer, Dan McDade on pencils, Roberto Paggi on inks, Trish Mulvihill and Matt Herms on colors, Troy Peachy on letters. This, for me, was really interesting. I'm curious to hear what you thought of Rocky. It just missed my top 5. I have it ranked at number 6. So give us your thoughts on it.
Oh, wow. Well, I wouldn't have put it in my... It was probably near the bottom of the top 10, but still, I liked John Kent showing up in it because, and I know we don't want to, we get tired of beating the dead horse of John Kent and all those years he spent in the volcano, but this is one where because of there's some magic involved and involving a magic mirror. When the word Shazam was said, John Kent was in the vicinity and the lightning hit him and it made him into a little boy. So just like Shazam turns into Billy Batson, because of the wonkiness of what happened, the lightning hits an older John Kent and it makes him young again, and he gets to be a kid. And essentially Billy Batson takes a young John Kent out and they have fun. They go play video games and he sort of relives his childhood a little bit. And they have some discussions. And what I find interesting is that writer, I guess is it Sina Grace?
Yeah. Yeah.
I like that she's not afraid to touch upon the fact that,
Sina Grace is a man, yes.
Sina Grace, okay, that he is that he's touched upon the years in the volcano. In fact, even Mary Marvel made a comment that, all the trauma that John Kent experienced in the volcano. And it's interesting because it's something that, Tom Taylor was very careful to completely breeze over, completely not make an issue out of it at all. John Kent was perfect. He doesn't even throw a punch through the 18, except one. He throws one punch in 18 issues of his own series. I still maintain there's been a degree of harm done to the character that he's still trying to dig himself out of. But this is a nice issue. It's a nice callback, nice reminder of that John Kent. He's still that kid that we love. He's just in an older, and it makes me realize how much I wish they wouldn't have aged him up. But Jay Nakamura shows up in here, and despite my version of that character, it's well done. It's well paced, and it's even Damien shows up, and I thought it was entertaining. For anyone who's a fan of Super Sons, I would strongly recommend. This is essentially a one shot. You don't need to read anything else for all intents and purposes. It's all explained here. So again, Shazam issue 20. If you're a Super Sons fan, pick this up. It'll put a smile on your face. And also, if you happen to be a fan of the older John Kent, and if you're a fan of if you're into Pride, LGBTQ, Jay Nakamura is here. It's got a little bit something for everybody, and all the iterations of the character, regardless of how you feel. There's something here to enjoy, I think, for everyone, no matter what facet of John Kent you enjoy. So that's why I want to give a shout out to it, because I thought that Sina Grace, I thought he did a good job on this.
Yeah, it was so interesting, right? I mean, so many people, they need to fix John Kent. They need to fix John Kent. They need to de-age him. And this is maybe a little on the nose with saying, okay, here, okay, here's why we're not going to do that. Here's why we're going to leave John Kent, as this older character. But then at the same time, it's like, well, or are you telling the people that that hadn't seen John Kent, in a long time, and want to be able to see him as a kid? You're giving them a chance to see John Kent as a kid. Like, it's so interesting. It's so interesting. Like, when I saw him as a kid, I was like, oh, here we go. Is this how it happens? Like, imagine the sales on this book, because it's not a book that has high sales. It's not a book that people, really order or pre-order or whatever. So there wouldn't be a lot of copies. And if this was the book that de-aged John Kent for good, oh my God, people would like be seeking it out. It's so interesting. So interesting. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. In a way, it feels very consequential for why you don't want to de-age John Kent. I mean, I just feel like that ship has really sailed at this point.
Yeah,
Like,
yes.
it's over and done with, everybody. I'm sorry, he's never going to go back to being a kid, except in stories like this. So pretty interesting to see him show up as a kid here. So
Yeah, most of the time when I talk about it, it's just to my therapist. So yeah.
yeah, there's plenty of people that definitely could. I mean, God, I still to this day see people. Yeah, they need to like, dude, it has been so long. It's not gonna happen. So anyway, let's move on. Up next, we have Absolute Superman, issue number 4, from writer Jason Aaron, Rafa Sandoval on art, Ulysses Areola on colors, Becca Carey on letters. So nobody's surprised. This is in my top 3. So yeah, give us your thoughts on it, Rocky.
Okay, just a moment here. Just get you on there. Yeah, sorry. I just where do I start? Jason Aaron, I like. I have a real appreciation for how he's. I love the slow pacing, that the way he's slowly building up this story, and what really hit me in this particular issue is, and it's basically through the commentary of the people that he's helped all over the world. Uh, Lois Lane, Lazarus agent Lois Lane, travels all over the world trying to locate Superman because he really impressed her in the earlier issues, and she's been trying to locate him, but he doesn't want to be found. But he's very much a mystery. But yet the people love him. People all over the world love him, but they also speak. He's kind of like a mystery, and it's what I found interesting is how one of the citizens described him is that they felt he was afraid, but they're waiting for the rage. They're waiting for it to be saved by Superman's rage, which I thought was what an interesting way to approach Absolute Superman. That they're waiting for Superman to explode. They're angry. The people are angry for what they have to put up with, and yet. Clearly, Superman. We know in the character moments of Absolute Superman that this Superman is a good man. He's got a kind heart, and yet I found it interesting that the people are looking forward to Superman's rage, and that they describe him as almost being afraid. And because this Absolute Superman, he's afraid of. He doesn't want to be publicly known. He kind of stays in the shadows. In many ways, he's sort of like an inverted Batman. Absolute Batman is about, instilling fear. This is a Superman who wants to stay in the shadows, and he's not looking for the limelight, but he's always that very much reluctant hero. And I think Jason Aaron's done a really good job of cultivating that. And you can see the formations of that in the early years of Kal-El, which we still don't know the full origin yet, which I love. I think it's worked really well. In this issue, we see a well-established relationship between Lois Lane and her father, Sam Lane, who is a war veteran and had his. It appears as if as he's missing his legs. He used to be a Lazarus agent himself, by the looks of things, and he got his legs chopped off by one of the members of the Omega Men. And Jimmy Olsen shows up. He's a member of the Omega Men. He's got a confrontation with Lois Lane. You can tell Jimmy kind of likes Lois Lane. He thinks she's got a good heart. He kind of wants to recruit her to the Omega Men. Not all members of the Omega Men agree with Jimmy on that. Peacemaker, we get into the mind of Peacemaker. This Peacemaker is really truly psychotic. He shouldn't even be Lazar's agent. His mind is, he's an overzealous. He's insane, and yet unfortunately the Brainiac computer system that you report to as a Lazarus agent, the one that will write all your reports for you. Peacemaker admits that he wanted to kill the people, and the Brainiac control will still wants to rewrite it and say no, it was an accident, and they send him back into active duty. I mean, clearly there's some corruption going on here within Lazarus. I still don't really know. It's not clear yet why Lois Lane wants to speak to Superman. I mean, sure, she must have some idea that who she's working for, it's corrupted, but does she? Is Lois Lane is not a naive character. You get the sense that she's definitely as one of the more intelligent characters here. She's also kick-ass, by the way. She kicks the hell out of Peacemaker. I mean, shoves a rod down his throat and it just almost electrocutes him to incapacitate him because of all the deadly actions he took against innocent civilians, which he repeats at the end of this issue. Oh man, so much great character work. I love this rendition of Superman. And honestly, Superman doesn't even show up in much of this issue. And when he does, it's epic. It's epic. And the whole idea of the dust that he brings with him, the dust seems to make people feel good. And I mean, even the title of this issue, I think, is called "Last Dust of Krypton," and it's very symbolic if you read this story in terms of what the people see when he shows up, and I think it's just very. I don't know. I'm loving this storyline. The level of sophistication of interest I have in this storyline, and I love it because it's Superman, but yet it's a cut above. I'm so used to the traditional tropey Superman. This doesn't feel tropey to me. It feels genuinely new. I'm captivated. I don't know what to expect, and it's not tropey. There's not cliches in here. I'm genuinely interested. I don't know where Jason Aaron's going with this, but I'm along for the ride. I love the slow pacing. I love the slow build up. And boy, oh boy, is it working for me. Just a candidate for pick of the week for me. There's another one as a candidate, maybe two. It was a really good week, but I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, definitely. Excuse me. Definitely makes my top three. The Last Dust of Krypton. That's the name of the arc, the first arc. This particular issue is Chasing the Storm, which is kind of appropriate, right? Because that's what Lois is doing. She's trying to chase down Superman. Where is he? What have you? You're right in that this feels so fresh, but still, we recognize Lois, right? Like, yeah, you can argue that she should know better from the Lois that we know. She's working for the Peacemakers, the Lazarus Corporation, alongside the Peacemakers. The Lois we know has this sort of inherent distrust of corporations and companies. So why would she be working? But it's the relationship you mentioned, having a close relationship with her father, and that sort of changes her a bit, right? So if we think about him fighting against the terrorist organization labeled as a terrorist organization by the Lazarus Corporation, Omega Men, they themselves would say, freedom fighters. Love these, again, it's just different iterations of who we're seeing. It's a different iteration of Lois. But because her father in a battle with the Omega Man lost his legs, you could sort of see her maybe subconsciously or unconsciously giving Lazarus Corporation a pass or benefit of the doubt because of her father, because she almost lost him when he was injured, brought him closer together, or what have you. He still seems like the same old SOB that he's always been. Sort of doesn't see the forest for the trees, and for all his tactical thinking and great strategist or whatever, he's never come across as a very self-aware character, or frankly very intelligent character in my mind. He's sort of like Thunderbolt Ross in that way, like he just wants what he wants. He's like a dog with a bone,
That's a
but he's
good
not smart.
comparison. Yeah.
Yeah, he's not smart enough to realize, dude, you're on the wrong side. Um, but yet we see in this issue how Lois is. What is she after? She's after Superman. Why? Because she's pursuing the truth. She's pursuing the truth. That is the most, like, the one overriding trait for Lois Lane. She's gonna seek out the truth. So how interesting where she starts out in this version of Superman, where she's sort of deluding herself, even if it's she's not aware that she's doing it, but it's going to be her relationship with Superman, Superman's existence itself, that's going to set her on this path where she's trying to find the truth. Eventually, she's going to find out she's on the wrong side. She'll be literally on the opposite side of her father. That's really interesting. We get the absolute version of Jimmy Olsen in this issue. Again, what's the kind of the core thing to Jimmy? It's his compassion, his desire for good. Of course, he's an Omega man, but of course, he's not the most competent fighter. But yet, he's got that compassion. He's got that ability to be positive and be optimistic and try to see the best in people. And that's why, he's arguing with the Alpha of the Omega Man to try to convince them to hey, Lois, just she's not a bad person, she just doesn't know the truth, we need to get her on her side, or whatever. It's definitely a Lois Lane issue, because you're right, Superman doesn't show up a lot in this issue, but when he does show up, like you said, it is a very powerful moment. So it's hard to overstate how great this book is in terms of giving us a fresh outlook on Superman. But if you look at the core of the characters, it remains true. When I talked to Jason Aaron at San Diego Comic-Con, that was the thing that he kept coming back to, the thing that he wanted to stress the most. Yes, we're going to go slow. Yes, we're throwing out, Krypton exploded and Superman came to Earth. That's everything else is going to be completely different. And yet, even though it is, which makes it feel fresh and exciting, and it gives us this sense of we don't know what's going to happen next. It could be, anything, which is so fun, especially for having read comics for as long as we have with these characters. But when he does bring these characters in, even though they are a completely different version of the character, the core of them is recognizable, right? Like when Lois shows up and she's a member of the Lazarus Corporation and she's fighting alongside the Peacemaker, you're like, whoa, what? She's a bad guy, quote unquote. That's crazy to think. But when you look at her actions and what she's done throughout the series, where she's searching for the truth, then you're like, yeah, that's Lois. She's out there for the truth. And when she finds out the truth about the Lazarus Corporation, you better believe she's going to set that tenacity toward taking them down and probably trying to convince her father that he's on the wrong side. So just a fantastic job. It was also great to see Christopher Smith, who is the Peacemaker in the main universe. And obviously one of the members of the Peacemaker here. He completely loses control, slaughters a bunch of civilians here. So I can't imagine that's going to go over well with Superman. And then when you have all this interesting character work and refreshing plot lines and just a really exciting story full of tons of action, you give us Rafa Sandoval turning into the best work of his career in my mind. It's just phenomenal, phenomenal artwork. Ulysses Areola on colors is doing a great job as well. Really bright colors jumping off the page. I mean, there's no doubt that this is in my top 3. It's been my book of the week, I think, every time it's come out, or at least top 2. And it's definitely a candidate for best. I can't say best new series because the first 2 issues I think came out in 2024, but it's definitely for best writer, for best continuing series.
For sure.
It's hard. Yeah, it's hard to overstate how good this book is.
I gotta interject. My favorite scene in the comic is when Superman flies down, and then Peacemaker's being a smart, being a real cool guy, thinks he's so rad. He says, "Remember me, pal," and he shoots Superman, and Superman says, "No."
Yeah.
And then Superman's got super memory, and he doesn't. I don't know who you. I don't remember you. And then freezes him with a super cold breath. I love that scene.
Yeah, you're not consequential to me, Christopher Smith.
Exactly, so. You're nobody.
Yeah,
awesome.
All right, last book that we're going to talk about also makes my my top 3. Um, so Absolute Superman and this book, Rocky, were the two that I thought you would be
Yeah.
one of these two would be your pick of the week. We'll see.
Well, you're
But it's
right.
Batman.
It's going to be a
Yeah,
long one.
Batman Offworld #6, also by Jason Aaron, pencils by Doug Mahnke, inks by Jaime Mendoza, with Doug Mahnke, and then colors by David Barron, letters by Troy Petrie. Man, this entire series has been so much fun. The Doug Mahnke art, I mean, it's Doug Mahnke art. It's exactly what you come to expect. Super detailed. He maybe is the best at drawing aliens of anybody. Um, if I have any nitpick about his art, it's that he puts in so much detail that even humans look alien sometimes, which is not great. But for this book, it's like you don't get any humans; it's all aliens, so it definitely works. Um, the characters um, from the Black Sun twins uh, to the Punch Bot to the Tamarian. What's her name? Ione.
Yeah, Ione. Yeah,
Ione. Yeah.
Ione. Yeah.
Um, her like what happens with her in the end. She gets inspired even after Batman goes home. You know, she's still out there in that part of the galaxy. She's now wearing a bat suit and sort of fighting under the mantle of Batman. Um, this whole entire book has just been so much fun. Um, not at all what I expected. Batman out in space, that's gonna feel overwrought. I mean, I won't forgive Chip Zdarsky for having Batman jump from the moon and say that's unrealistic, and yet here Batman's fighting against all these aliens, and he does have the help of some technology, advanced technology armor that he built or what have you. But at the end of the day, it's his willpower and his desire to prevail and his unwillingness to give up that wins the day, right? Like when he's captured at the beginning, so the way Ione and Batman get into the kind of infiltrate the Black Sun headquarters is Ione pretends that she's captured Batman, she's betraying him, she's going to turn him in, and the male Black Sun twin, the one that whispers things and drives people insane, he's whispering to Batman and doesn't understand. He's getting agitated because he doesn't understand how he can keep whispering to Batman um, all this time, and it's Batman is still sane. He hasn't lost it. He hasn't like clawed his own eyes out and died of terror or whatever.
Yeah.
And Batman, turns the tables and whispers to this guy, and it breaks him. And we find out later that all he says is "I'm Bat." You're like, how could you do it? How could you survive? Well, I'm Batman, right?
It's awesome.
And,
It's awesome.
and it's yeah, I have it down as like best moment of the year, because in a way it's like really cliched, right? Like that line, somebody has been growled by so many people from Michael Keaton to Christian Bale and whatever. And so it feels a little trite, you could say. Oh, he's a whisper, but the point is he's answering the question, right? Like this Black Sun, how could you how are you not losing your mind? How have I not driven you crazy? How have you survived? Well, because I'm Batman. Like I'm like yes, it seems sort of silly, but it's also the answer, because he's Batman, because he's made himself in mind and body into the ultimate surviving, fighting, tactical machine. He's going to do whatever it takes to win. That's what it means to be Batman, and it's all summed up in him saying, "Yeah, I'm Batman."
Yeah.
So yeah, this was so good. Um, I'm gonna have a hard time if this comes out in hardcover. I'm gonna have a hard time not wanting to pick this up in hardcover, because it's just I feel like it stands alone. You don't have to read anything else. You don't have to know what's going on in the regular DCU. If you know somebody that's a Batman fan and you want to just give them a book that's got great art, tons of action, great color work, and really sums up who Batman is, like you could give them the collection of the collected edition. Just here you go, read this. You don't have to read anything else. Um, yeah, I have a feeling it's going to sell pretty well in the collected edition. It'll probably be um, one of those books, one of those stories that just DC, it's evergreen, right? Like it's always in print. I could definitely see it standing the test of time.
Yeah.
So the rules, it's been again a couple years since we've done the Comic Source Award, but the way we do miniseries is it's eligible for best miniseries in the year that the final issue comes out. So even though the other 5 issues all came out in 2024, this book will actually be eligible for best miniseries for 2025, and it's
Yeah.
definitely going to get consideration from me. So,
Yeah.
anyway, give
Well,
us your thoughts on it, Rocky.
Well, one way to give this a hell of an indirect compliment. First of all, I absolutely love this series. It's an evergreen. It's an instant evergreen. It'll sell like hotcakes. My prediction into the future. I'm getting the hardcover. I already decided that for sure. The isn't it something? How you want to know how good this series is? Normally, you and I complain about the unbelievable delay with this final issue, and yet we
Yeah.
didn't even mention it. We didn't. I don't even want to mention it. And I remembered what had happened because I loved the 5 issues. It was so well written, so visceral, so awesome, so Batman in space. How epic is that? And 2 great lines in this issue. The first one, of course, was Batman whispering, "I am Batman," to whisper Black Sun's ear, and the other one is the line, "I am Punchbot."
Yeah.
When Punchbot shows up, says, "Who in the name of the moons are you?" Says one of the says Wrath Black Sun, and I am Punchbot. I mean Punchbot. I mean, who would have thought? I mean, when you got a a robot like character. I mean, there's all types of throwaway characters like that. Somehow Jason Aaron has managed to create a celebrity out of a robot in a comic book. I mean, good for you. I mean, the art's absolutely fantastic. I think that the design, Doug Mankey's design of the Black Sun siblings is incredible. One of the most visually terrifying and awesome looking villains. I mean, the Black Sun siblings look just incredibly intimidating. And I love how everything is wrapped up so wonderfully in this epic tale. Batman, he goes into space because he learns how can he defeat aliens if they come to Gotham? Well, naturally, only Batman would think of spending billions of dollars to fly into space to learn how to fight aliens. And lo and behold, we get this fantastic 6-issue story arc out of it. I got to tell you, man, this is something where if DC has any brain cells left and they're firing on all cylinders, give Jason Aaron a sequel to this. I want to see Ione again. I mean, the legend of Batman. I mean, the Batman family exists in space through Ione, who is basically going to be spreading the legend of Batman throughout the galaxy. This is awesome. Give her own series, for God's sakes. I mean, this is it's so well done. It's going to be, we're going to be getting to our pick of the week here in a bit, but I'm impressed. I love it. And Doug Mankey's art's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, it is. Yeah, you're right about us. Neither one of us mentioning how late it got, which is so interesting to me. All right. Anyway, some collected editions this week. Absolute Power hardcover just collects the 4-issue series as well as Absolute Power Ground Zero. Flash Mark Waid Omnibus Volume 2 collects Flash issue 0 and then 92 to 129, some annuals and some other tie-ins. Batman and Robin by Tomasi and Gleason Book 2, which collects a ton of their series. Nubia to Real is a new Nubia story in the YA line, and then Icon versus Hardware, which is the recent story by I can't remember who wrote that. It was Reginald Hundlin, the Milestone Universe, all 5 issues collected. There's also a Teen Titans collected edition out that collects the entirety of the Judas Contract. So that's very classic Wolfman Perez stuff from the 80s. If you're so inclined, you can check that out. And also, if you're curious and want to complete your Absolute Power series, collection, event, what have you, the Absolute Power Origins, that's the 3-issue Amanda Waller series by John Ridley, which it's technically a very good comic, but I can't in good conscience recommend it because it's Amanda Waller being, awful, despicable Amanda Waller. So yeah, it's reminding us why we all despise her. Also, Absolute Power Task Force 7 is getting a trade as well that collects all 7 issues of that series. And then finally, Batman 89 trade paperback. So that's collecting the. Sorry, it's right in my eyes. That's collecting the first Sam Hamm, John Quinones Batman '89 series that we had, issues 1 through 6, is getting a trade. So it's not the most recent one that was really really late that that I don't think we've gotten the end of yet. Actually, now that I say that, that is not one that's so great that we give it a pass for being ridiculously late. So, all right. So let me just remind everybody. So, my top 3, I listed Absolute Superman, Batman Offworld, and Poison Ivy as my top 3. I'm giving my book of the week to Poison Ivy, number 30. It was close. My heart wanted to give it to Absolute Superman, but I feel like I've called out Absolute Superman every time, and I want to give some love to Poison Ivy because I don't hear enough people talking about how great that book is, and it's a really fantastic book. So I wanted to give it a shout out.
Well, I have a much easier job. It's between Batman Offworld and Absolute Superman. The beautiful aspect of this is that Jason Aaron wrote them both. So he still wins. But because, it's not always the case that a comic book is stellar throughout and nails the landing, but Batman Offworld nailed the landing, and that's why it goes to Batman Offworld. I absolutely loved Absolute Superman issue 4, but just because Batman Offworld ended with such a bang, I'm going to go with that. And kudos to Jason Aaron. Did a hell of a job, and what a great way to cap off just a pretty good week of DC Comics.
Yeah, I can't believe that neither one of us picked Absolute Superman. It's such a great issue. It's such a great issue, but yeah, it's been getting a lot of attention, so it's fine for us to call out some other books that might not be getting as much attention. So anyway, that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. Appreciate you joining us as always. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, subscribe. Rocky's channel, Comics Face Boom! Over on YouTube. Also, if you want to listen to our Indie Spotlight, again, just do a search for the Comic Source on YouTube. That's where that comes out every Tuesday, Wednesday-ish. Also, reminder, you can listen to the audio feed of the Comic Source podcast wherever you get your podcast, whatever platform or app you prefer. So that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. We appreciate you joining us as always, and we'll talk to you next time.
Catch you later.